Mr. Grant, please start with the first agenda item. Read your agenda.
The only presentation this evening is the board had asked us to, the administration, to bring to the board tonight the final budget with a 1.9% tax increase and reflect a 2.3% tax increase. Since the proposed final budget was presented back on April 25th, I believe it was the date, or 23rd, and was approved by the board at the May board meeting, there's been no significant changes in the budget. Staffing additions, the only change here with the staffing additions are the positions that we've added will be funded through the Title I federal funding or Title II federal funding. We did add 17 safety monitors for cafeteria coverage in our middle schools. That will be all supported through our food service program. We did add, there were 2 IT technicians that were added to the budget. One will be reimbursed through the food service program. This way we will have 2 dedicated IT techs that will help support the food service program, one at the elementary and one at the secondary level. Once again, the 6 classroom assistants at Highland Park to help assist, I believe it's with the first grade enrollment issues that we'll have over there in the upcoming year. 2 instructional tech coaches we're going to fund them through the Title II. The school district was awarded a safe school award in the amount of $2.252 million. This has previously been announced by administration to the board. We did incorporate this into the budget, but please note, we have not received any funding as of yet. Still waiting for final word to come from PDE, whether the district will receive this full amount or not. As you can see here, here is the proposed final budget. We were able to reduce it by about, our expenditures exceeding revenues were reduced by about $685,000. That's primarily because we transferred the employees to be federally funded. We also re-reviewed various areas of our revenues, especially investment income, as we can see, and be able to better predict out what our earnings would be and compare it to what we have now as we're getting closer to the end of the year. Looking at what the feds are potentially going to do, and we already have had communication about what the our investment firm at PISLAF is looking at as far as changes they're expecting in the near future, as everybody's believing that the feds are going to be dropping interest rates. Tonight, what we're showing is the district has $2.69 million in revenue, $215,000.1 in expenditures, which leaves about $8.2 million of uncovered costs that we need to balance the budget with. A tax increase of 1.9% would generate $1.92 million. That would require the board to commit $6.256 million to balance the budget for the upcoming school year. The other option would be a 2.3% tax increase. That would provide about $2.326 million in tax revenues for the district. And a board would be required to commit $5.851 million of its fund balance to, once again, to have a final, to balance the budget with the final budget. Here we're demonstrating what the 2 tax increases and how it would impact taxpayers based on various levels of assessment. As you can see, the dollar amounts range from $35 a year for a $50,000 home that's assessed at $50,000 to $212 additional for a house that's assessed at $300,000, or respectively $2.94 a month increase to a $20.58 increase at a 1.9% tax rate. If we were to increase taxes by 2.3%, the variance is really $8 at the lower level and $44 at the higher level, or $2.94 a month compared to $3.56 a month for a home assessed at $50,000. For a home assessed at $300,000, it would be $20.58 a month compared to $21.36 a month. At this time, the floor is open to the board for questions and discussion on a tax increase that they would like to implement and move forward to the special voting meeting for this evening.
Can you just explain what the base index is, what it means that the state provides to us, and then obviously we're not even looking in the range of an adjusted index. Could you explain that?
The base index is provided to us by PDE as part of the Act 1 timeline in early September, usually around September 1st. This takes into consideration a number of different variables. The income levels in your district, a lot of census data is used, poverty levels are used. So they compile the data and the state comes out with an average base index rate which is the recommended rate at minimum that you can increase taxes, and that was 2.3%. The adjusted base index depends upon the level of poverty within your district and how it can be modified. The formula that's applied would allow the district to raise taxes upward, or the school board to raise taxes upwards to a maximum of 3.3%. The board, having taken in consideration these matters back in January, opted out, passed an opt-out resolution, knowing that they would not pass tax, that they would not go out to exceed taxes above the adjusted index. Meaning, the board had an opportunity to take a look at various different referendum exemptions that they could apply for with the state that would allow them to basically increase the taxes over the 3.3 threshold. The school board of directors did not want to take that direction. They have they understand the issues that all of our stakeholders are facing in the Upper Darby School District, and that tax rate would not. They did not want to go above that. So.
Index in line with inflation? Is that, I mean, that's what I believe.
The CPI right now is running about 2.2, as for the May, is 2%. So it's not far off. It's slightly higher than the CPI index that we would see in the reports over the last year. But also there's a discussion everywhere else where we're seeing inflation beginning to rise, and there's certain concerns down in Washington and with the feds.
Mr. Grant, you just gave a good explanation about the base index. And obviously, both the percentages that we're considering that we're looking at is below that. So can you just talk about the pros and cons or the ramifications of the 1.9 versus the 2.3 as best you can explain it, things we should consider as a board in looking at those two percentages?
I wouldn't use the words pros or cons. It's never a it's a very difficult position that a school board of directors sits in. And I think in prior years, I won't do the damn dirty shame talk, but I will address that, you know, we are sitting here as a board about to tell its constituents how much you're going to increase taxes. The state has not passed the budget. Federal programs have not been awarded yet. We're working with a lot of unknowns. There's House bills in Harrisburg that could impact the budget going forward with our charter schools. Mr. Fields, you've talked about, that was a House Bill 584 before?
Senate Bill
that had the potential of relieving districts who provide cyber programs a lot of tax dollar revenues going out the door. Cricket.
Today that Senator Killian just sponsored SB 34. So
Okay.
it seems to be gaining a little bit more support.
That would be great for the district, because what you're talking is about $3.8 to $4 million that we're paying out to cyber schools. And it would be a great way to invest that money into the district and be able to save the taxpayers by enhancing our own cyber program. Some other elements to take into consideration. Now, we've had discussions about the Moody's phone call, about the bond rating increases. You know, it took a lot of work with Moody's and discussion with Moody's to address with them our bond rating and how the board, how we actually budget. We budget conservatively. We don't go to the highest in tax increase that we could possibly go to. They would like to see that. We can't do that. We don't, our tax base and our constituents are paying a high level of taxes. You have been very conscientious of that. That and the way we budget and the outcomes, which are not something we can predict in the beginning of the year as far as turnover may be concerned, because that can vary from one year to the next year. That had a big impact. It was enabled, the district, when they reviewed it, they went to their committee meeting, they were able to take the dialogue and written notes about how the board has acted, and we turned around a negative situation into a positive. We're now an A1A rating, and we have, for our bonds, which today, the sale was completed. So we added just about $6.5 million of proceeds into our Fund 39, or other capital projects. So kudos to the board for thinking of that move. The issue is when you start going below the base index, as an example here. Okay. 2.3 is the base index. The board asks us to consider 1.9. You're losing $400,000 of revenue that you would see every year. Unfortunately, you're $16 million underfunded by the state. You know, we're talking $90 million in the last 5 years. We wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now or debating what the tax increase would be. But we're in a particular element, we're in Harrisburg, that schools in our area are not properly funded, like schools in the western central part of the state. Compare Lancaster County, a school similar, very similar to Upper Darby. Student enrollment, buildings. How come they can get $62 million in funding a year, and we only can get 39 or 38? Something's wrong with the picture here. So, go ahead. If you're losing $400,000 a year of income that you know you can have every year going down the road, there's going to be an impact that's going to be compounded every year. I believe Mr. Rogers provided the board some financial information on that, and it's in the board docs. You don't know, I mean, every year we've walked into a budget season, and you do not know what Washington's going to do. You pull the plug on Title II, you pull the plug on Title IV, you have lost your professional development. How are you going to fund that in the future? You are dealing with so many unknowns and so many variables, and you're juggling every day. And the advice that our administration is providing you is, and why we recommended a 2.3, is to protect the district from any unknowns that may occur in the future. And now.
So if I can just
So,
jump
go
on
ahead.
that, so Mr. Brown's question about the 1.9, 2.3, and when you look at the dollar amount, you know, using more of the fund balance to cover those costs is really what we're talking about,
Yeah.
using that savings account. We'd have to be very aware of, and we certainly can, be aware of the capital improvements and the projects and the priority items. What that would mean is we'd have to make sure that obviously life safety and those things are taken care of now, continue to advocate, which I know this entire board would like to do. Hey, you know what? This has happened in the past. Our taxpayers just can't do it anymore, and they can't. You know, if it's a 1.9 tax increase, you know, the reality is we need funding at some point in time. The reason why we are administratively looking at the 1.9 to the 2.3 is because this board has asked us to continue to look at the facilities, rightfully so. And that's been a good thing over the last couple of years of putting that money in to try to improve those facilities. That $400,000, God forbid, the issue becomes a bad winter or something happens. That's the negative. And historically, a board member should say this to me, well, in the past, those things may not have been as high a priority item as they are now. And that's left us in a situation where we have a big capital improvement list of projects that have to be taken into consideration. The 1.9, we'd have to figure it out. We would figure it out. I think all that the administration's concern would be is an awful winter or a bad thing happening in some of those high priority capital improvement items. Trying to make sure that we didn't have that issue. As far as what Patrick is talking about, Title I, Title II, Title III funding, for the last couple of years, we keep on hearing that dangled in front of us politically, that we're going to cut your Title II funding and your funding for professional development. And that would be, forget your 1.9, 2.3, that would be a big deal to the district if those dollars were cut. And we're trying to balance a budget saying that we're going to get that money, because we should get that money. So if that money came out, that professional development counter that you just passed would be totally different, because you wouldn't have the funding to fund that professional development budget. So really, it comes down to, we'd have to administratively hear from the board, keep your eye on the capital improvement lists and those priorities, and we'd have to make those adjustments moving forward on that list, is really what it comes down to, that difference.
No more questions or comments from the board. We'll take public comments now. Please step up to the microphone and say your name and address.
Lois
Thank you, Dr.
Johnston, 602 Millbank Road in the Stonehurst Hills section of Upper Darby. I just don't understand the fund balance. How do you deplete that, or where has it come from originally, and you're taking from it for the taxes to the budget to be balanced?
If you think about a savings account and you have costs that are out there, a washer and dryer that need to be taken care of, something like that, in our school district, we have a pension.
Okay.
And our school district has to keep a certain dollar mark earmarked in our fund balance to cover certain costs, such as previous capital improvement costs, PSERS contributions for retirement systems, and then the recommendation is anywhere between 5% and 8% in your unassigned also being there to cover what we're talking about, such would be unforeseen circumstances or emergency situations that we would have to cover as a district to keep that in play. As far as our ability to then borrow money, just like us, just like me and you or anybody else, if we don't have a lot of money in our bank, a bank probably won't allow us to borrow money from them because they don't see us having the ability to pay it back. So if we don't have that fund balance, that kind of savings account, a little bit of that savings account, it hurts our ability to then borrow money to make the improvements in the district that we have. It's been, I guess, communicated publicly over the last 10 to 15 years that these districts have created these slush funds and these accounts that they shouldn't have. But the reality is these funds are recommended to be there to help offset costs and issues and allow us to have a position to borrow money and then pay that out over time
Okay,
in our savings account.
I understand.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Okay, back to you, Mr. Grant. You was
Okay.
about to say.
This evening, the board action would be, the board would need to decide which tax increase they would need to move forward to a vote for this evening. Please note, due to this circumstances of this evening, there will be two finance and budget reports that are available on board docs, as we did not know what rate, what would be moving forward. So what doesn't move forward to this evening would need to be stricken off the record, and that report would be taken off. So this evening is really board consensus to move which tax rate they would like to, which tax increase they would like to move forward this evening.
Okay, would you like to poll the board, Mr. Grant?
So my recommendation might be a little different. My recommendation would be we can adjourn this and maybe go into that meeting and then take action on one of those tax increases, call the board on the tax increase.
The way that I see it normally then is that after the voting meeting, you simply fill in two choices to go down the line.
Thanks, Kyle. It's another new situation that we are experiencing this evening.
I want to thank you for putting both of these together and the transparency, because a few years ago I was on the board and all of a sudden there was this alternate tax rate that was brought to the table where no one really knew what it meant or how, what impact it was going to have on the budget and taxpayers. It came at the table. So I just wanted to thank you for the transparency and putting this together this way.
And I would say, I agree. I think the board's engagement and the questions, and it's difficult conversations. I think the board is very much interested in providing the best for the kids and not overwhelming the taxpayers. At some point in time, somebody has to wake up. To Pat's point of comparing districts, we want every school district to get what they deserve. And the reality is, why are we so underfunded? Yet, ironically, we have to tax more to people who struggle to make ends meet. It doesn't seem to work out that way. At some point in time, there has to be a button that hits that funds these schools. So I guess we'll make that decision in the next piece. We'd have to adjourn this and go from there.
If I can make one comment. It's interesting when I meet other individuals who are from the Upper Darby School District in conversations outside of here. And when they find out that I'm a business manager with the school district, and now, Kevin, I'm going to make a request to you. It's probably my final night here serving as board secretary. It would be great that when you start talking to people outside of here, they have no clue what's going on in Harrisburg. Their focus is solely on the school board. It's not the school board's fault that this is happening. Nobody seems to understand the impacts of underfunding coming from the legislators in Harrisburg. And when you start talking about it and giving them some facts and figures, they start to understand a little bit better. There's a lot of reporting on Upper Darby. Maybe my final request would be some type of article to inform the public where this stems from, why it's occurring, that this school board is dedicated to the children and constituents and all others, everybody here within the Millbourne, Upper Darby, and Clifton boroughs. They do this job for free. And it's a difficult job when you're asked to present a budget, lay out a tax rate, and you have no information here from the state, no information here from the feds, but it's all on you to make the decision. I empathize with this board and every member of the board that I have served and worked with over the last 9.5 years. It's a very difficult spot. And it would be helpful if the everyday Joe and Sally could be given information through publications about why this is happening. And my concern is Upper Darby. This is where I served for 9.5 years. And why this is happening. Because once they start realizing it, maybe they'll start using their voice to help better their lives, to help better our community, to help us build new facilities, to help improve formats of education for all students across the township and school district.
You got all that, buddy?
That's my piece.
Write that down, man.
Thank you, sir.
Motion to adjourn?
So,
All right, meeting adjourned.
okay, so we're going to start right away with the special meeting. We're going to special meeting to order for the purpose of adopting the 2019-2020 final budget and any other business that comes before the board. There was a closed door session tonight from 5:15 to 6:10 for matters to be discussed for closed deliberations as prescribed by Pennsylvania Act 93 of 1998. For tonight, it was litigation and personnel matters. Roll call, please. Mr. Grant.
Ms. Gentile?
Here.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Here.
Ms. Jordan?
Here.
Dr. Rucci? Here. Dr. Taylor?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
Ms. Curry?
Here.
Mr. Brown? Here. Ms. Mitchell?
Here. Thank you. The instruction and curriculum report, please, Mrs. Curry.
The instruction and curriculum report is in the hands of each board member and has been made available to the public. I move for its adoption.
Second.
Are there any comments from the board? Comments from the public? Seeing none, roll call, please, Mr. Grant.
Ms. Gentile?
Aye.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Dr. Rucci? Aye. Dr. Taylor? Aye. Mr. Fields? Aye. Ms. Curry?
Aye.
Mr. Brown? Aye. Ms. Mitchell?
Motion carries. The personnel report, Dr. Taylor.
The personnel report is in the hands of each board member and has been made available to the public. I move for its adoption.
Are there any comments from the board? Okay.
I would just like to welcome Mr. Craig Harnachek to the team. I know we need a lot of help with Trinity and Joe Dory, so thank you very much and we welcome you.
Roll call, Mr. Grant.
Ms. Gentile?
Aye.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Dr. Rucci? Aye. Dr. Taylor? Aye. Mr. Fields? Aye. Ms. Curry? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Mitchell?
Aye, motion carries. The next up is the facilities report. Mrs. Jordan.
The facilities report has been provided to the board, and I move for its adoption this evening.
Are there any comments from the board?
I did want to note the three of the items that are on the facilities report this evening. The one that we added was the permits to the Upper Darby High School bathroom renovations, and that we will be paying the township $59,346 in permits to get this work done.
Any other comments from the board? I did also want to note for the facilities that this does include the locker room replacements for ninth grade and the varsity football locker room, so I'm thrilled that we're able to do that for our students. Are there any other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Seeing none, roll call, please, Mr. Grant.
Ms. Gentile?
Aye.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Dr. Rucci? Aye. Dr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Fields? Aye. Ms. Curry?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Mitchell?
Aye, motion carries. The next up is the supplies report.
Excuse me, Ms. Mitchell, there's also the addendum to the facilities report that we need to pass this evening. I'll just state what it is. It's actually the playground equipment at the various locations, which are Bywood Elementary School, the Upper Darby High School daycare, which is where the preschool is, and the kindergarten center.
Any other comments from board members? Comments from the public? Seeing none, roll call, please, on the facilities
On the
report.
agenda, Ms. Gentile?
Aye.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Dr. Rucci? Aye. Dr. Taylor? Mr. Fields? Ms. Curry? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Mitchell?
Aye, motion carries. Now the supplies report, Mrs. Gentile.
The supplies report is in the hands of each board member and has been made available to the public, and I move for its adoption.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any comments from board members? Comments from the public? Seeing none, roll call, please, Mr. Grant.
Ms. Gentile?
Aye.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Dr. Rucci? Aye. Dr. Taylor? Aye. Mr. Fields? Aye. Ms. Curry? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Mitchell?
Aye, motion carries. The next up is the Finance and Budget Report. Mr. Brown.
The finance and budget report is in the hands of each board member, has been made available to the public. I move for its adoption.
Second.
Mr. Brown, I would need which finance and budget report that you would like.
Okay, so this way we need to poll the board and see which one. Okay.
We have a motion and we have a second. So now I'm going to ask for comments from the board first. Is there any comments from the board about the budget?
So obviously, there's no right or wrong answers in this scenario, in this situation. And Pat, you eloquently stated how the position that we're in and that there's no, absolute right or wrongs. And obviously, one of the things we're all sensitive to are the taxpayers, our constituents, and how much taxes, the amount of taxes that they all pay and that we all pay. It's a tough decision. And I'm sure, we'll make the one that's prudent, that's fiscally responsible, and go with that.
Are there any other comments from board members?
Just to piggyback after Mr. Brown, this is one of the most difficult decisions, and Mr. Grant, you did say there are a lot of unknowns, but we do know what the knowns are, and we do know that our community members are taxed beyond belief. I'm hopeful, which is what gets me through each day. Even though we're losing $400,000 potentially in revenue, that will be creative, and maybe we'll get sponsorships, and there'll be building incentives for this new construction that we can make up this difference. And we will continue to advocate for our taxpayers, and hopefully everything that you said will be quoted in the paper when Mr. Tustin writes his article.
Thank you again, Mr. Grant, for all the information that you provided. Again, this is an extremely difficult decision. I don't think anyone here on the board wouldn't like to provide some relief, considering we pay the taxes as well. And when you sit down and really look at the facts of, as Ms. Jordan said, losing the $400,000 over time could be completely impactful in a negative way. And so we have a lot of things that we're trying to do to change, and we talk considerably in these board meetings about how we want to see change for our students. And this, unfortunately, we've had to ask the taxpayers to continue to invest because the state hasn't invested for us. So I just appreciate your comments, and looking at the fiscal responsibility is going to be extremely important for this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat, for all of your comments. I know that we are a underfunded school district, and we are also an overly taxed tax base. And I just want to ask everyone that when we are going to advocate in Harrisburg, and we were trying to push our legislators for more funding and more money into the fair funding formula, that you come with us and you help us, because there's power in numbers. So, thank you.
I'm having a problem with the loss of the 400,000 and the fact that we are going to go out to borrow. I'm wondering if in the long run, we're going to lose money by losing that 400 as far as getting interest and so on our, how's that going to affect our borrowing if we keep losing 400,000 every year? Is it going to end up costing us more money in the long run?
A financial analysis was provided by Mr. Rogers to the school board of what the impact would look like if we were to adopt a budget with a 1.9%, and we stayed at that taxing level for the next 30 years. He also provided data on, Craig, if you feel more comfortable, want to talk about it than having me talk for you, you're more than welcome to come up, because this is your work. And you can take credit for it, but he also, on the bond rate? Okay.
That's what I'm wondering about.
How would it impact bond rating?
Yeah, because
That's really,
later-
Moody would have to take that in consideration. It would be it would be less than conservative of a school board to adopt a tax rate that's below the based index. How Moody will interpret that next year when if we're moving forward with construction and looking at borrowing $22 million over the course of the next 3 years each year, even more than $27 million for the building of the schools and for continuing our construction on our own improvements on our own facilities. I can't tell you what they could do. It could have a negative impact.
And we would end up paying more money in the long run.
A negative, we were fortunate enough to bring our approval rating up. It resulted in lower interest rates.
That's what I'm concerned about.
If the Moody's ratings comes down, it will result in higher interest rates.
But all that is all the different factors. I mean, the reality is, if it's unfortunate, which was covered in a difficult way this past November, but if we have 150 staff turnover, there might not be an impact on our ability to borrow money in that piece of it. As a school district, we're budgeting, we don't want that, but, I think what the board is looking at is that give and take is there. If the turnover is high, that's the concern on the taxpayer level. So we don't know what that impact would be. It's difficult to give that answer. But if it's like this past November, someone could come back and say, you went to 2.3% or 2.4% or 2.5%, and more of the fund balance came back. That's the issue.
Mr. Grant, just a quick question. In the past, how was our bond rating affected when we did like a very small or 0% tax increase? Was it adversely affected at that time?
We weren't borrowing money at that point in time. Most of our refunding had already been accomplished.
But to answer that question, part of the answer is a 0% tax increase 1 year, looking at having to make cuts and talking about balancing that budget. There were concerns with that original 0% tax increase that Moody's and others look at it as a concern in the past. So
Yes.
we had a downgrade 1 year because of the amount of the use of the fund balance.
Right.
Are there any other comments from board members? We'll take comments from the public. Seeing none. I guess, Mr. Grant, poll vote for which tax increase?
Ms. Gentile, a 1.9 or a 2.3%?
I'm concerned about our borrowing and the fact that it might cost us more money in the long run, so I'm going to go with a 2.3.
Mr. Desnoyers?
The 1.9%.
Ms. Jordan?
The 1.9%.
Dr. Rucci? 1.9%. Dr. Taylor?
1.9%.
Mr. Fields?
1.9.
Ms. Curry?
2.3.
Mr. Brown?
1.9.
Ms. Mitchell?
2.3, the 1.9 motion carries.
Thank you.
With that being said, we have new business tonight, Mr. Grant?
There is an item, thank you, Ms. Mitchell. We received a communication from special counsel regarding a property owned by the Friends of Sellers Hall, located on Hampton Road in Upper Darby. The issue here is that the county made an error last year. And their error was the museum, which is supported through private and public charities. It was moved from an exempt status to a taxable status, and then moved back to an exempt status in 2019. I was contacted by Ms. Coles back in October regarding the issue. I recommended to her to have the legal representative for the hall contact the county to address the issue. This has been going on for several months. What we're bringing to the board this evening is a request for the district special counsel to settle the 2018 appeal and deem them as exempt for the year 2018. This is the one outstanding issue for the 2018 year. Allow me to close the books, and that's why we're bringing it to you on such short notice this
Okay,
evening.
so I'm going to ask Mr. Brown to please move this resolution.
Real estate tax assessment appeals. Be it resolved that the Board of School Board Directors hereby authorizes the district special counsel to settle the following 2018 real estate assessment appeal by the Friends of Sellers Hall as exempt for the tax year 2018 as a museum maintained by private and public charity.
So I need a second. Okay, are there any comments from the board? I just want to say that I've been there, and they're really trying to rehab it, and I'm looking forward to, in the future, to have our students be able to experience that site once it's, you know, safe. So I have a motion and a second, and I made comments. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, poll vote, please, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Ms. Gentile?
Aye.
Mr. Desnoyers?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Dr. Rucci? Dr. Taylor? Mr. Fields? Ms. Curry? Mr. Brown? Ms. Mitchell?
Aye, motion carries. Now, a motion is in order for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.